A function does a transformation on an input. But what if there was some way to reverse that transformation? This is the idea of an inverse function. A way to reverse a transformation and get back to our original input. In this lecture, we'll try to find out the inverse of a function using the standard method of finding the inverse of a function with an example. Let's look at the problem statement. We're given a function which is already one-to-one. We have to find out the inverse of that function, and then finally we have to check whether the inverse of the function we have found is correct or not. So we're going to follow the standard method of finding the inverse. So the first thing we do is we check whether the function is one-to-one or not. Since it's already told that it is an inverse function, we don't have to worry about that. So the first thing is to check whether the function is one-to-one, and this function f of x is equal to minus 3x over x plus 3, this is already one-to-one. Now the next step is to swap f of x for y. So we have f of x. In place of f of x, we're just going to write y. Great. Everything else remains the same. Next, we interchange x and y. So we have to swap the x and y, switch variables from x to y. So we have y here, we're going to switch to x. We have x here, switch to y. We have x at the bottom, we switch to y. So we interchange between x and y, and we're just calling it an inverse world. We are now in the inverse world after interchanging the variables. Now we go ahead and solve for y. So we have this equation now. We're going to solve this for y. Now we multiply this equation with y plus 3 on both sides, and this is what we get. X times y plus 3 is equal to minus 3y. Now we multiply it through and bring this term on the left side. So this is what we have now. Next we are trying to solve for y, so we have to make sure the y terms remains on the left, and the rest of the term, like plus 3x, will go on the other side of the equal sign. So it becomes negative 3x. And now, if we divide this by x plus 3, we get y here. Y is equal to minus 3x divided by x plus 3. Great. We just solved for y. Now, replace y with f inverse of x. So, in place of y, we just write f inverse, and everything else is the same. Great, we already found the f inverse of this function. We were given a function and we figured out the f inverse of that function using some simple steps. This is the standard way to find out the inverse of a function. It's interesting if you see that the function f of x minus 3x over x plus 3 and the inverse of that function is equal to minus 3x over x plus 3, they came out same. It's quite interesting. So we found out the inverse of this function. Now, so we have the inverse of this function, we just calculated. Now we have to check for its correctness. So what is the way to check it? One of the fundamental properties of inverse functions is that if we take the f inverse of f of x, we're going to get x. Likewise, we can calculate f inverse of x, and we're going to get the same answer, x. So either way, we can check it. Let's just perform this operation to check the correctness of the inverse of this function. We could also do the other way around, but let's just do it. So we calculate f inverse of f of x, and what is f of x? F of x is equal to negative 3x divided by x plus 3. Now we consider this f of x is equal to this whole thing as a box. So we bring this box and plug into this f inverse. So f inverse of this whole box comes in here. Now we have one function remaining, which is f inverse. So what is f inverse? We calculated that f inverse is minus 3x over x plus 3. Now we have this box inside, this whole thing, consider that as a big box, and we're gonna put this box inside of this function, inside of this x. So we have minus 3x. So we have minus 3, and this whole thing as a box comes over here. Similarly, we have x, the whole thing as a box comes over here, then plus 3. Great. Now we multiply minus 3 and minus 3, we get 9x over x plus 3. And over here, we have to distribute this x plus 3 to bring everything on top. So we have minus 3x plus 3x. Alright, so we multiply through plus 3x plus 3 into 3 going to give us 9. So minus 3x and plus 3x will cancel each other out. We're going to left with 9. So we have 9, and the term x plus 3 and this term x plus 3 will cancel each other out. We're going to be left with 9x divided by 9. So 9 and 9 cancel each other out, and we're going to get x. Great, everything checks out. So we wanted to find f inverse of f of x is equal to x, and we have found this. We have calculated it and found that f inverse of f of x gives us x, which means the inverse function that we have found is correct. So this way we can check the correctness of our inverse function. If you really want to be absolutely sure, you can doubly check it. You can perform this operation, f of f inverse of x, that will also give you x. You can go ahead and do it and find the same answer, x.